In the spiraling arms of the galaxy, where starlight weaves tapestries of civilization, there existed a consensus. The Hyalvani were the pinnacle of medical science. Their bodies, elegant and slender like figures carved from moonstone, housed biocomputers of crystalline purity. Their cities were not of steel and stone, but of grown biopolymers, glowing with internal light, perfectly sterile, perfectly controlled. They had mapped every genetic sequence of 1,000 species, eradicated senescence in their own, and could regrow a limb in a cycle. They were, by any metric, the healers of the galaxy. And they were dying. It was called the glass plague, a pathogen of terrifying elegance. It didn't rot or burn, it translated. It analyzed a host's biological structure, and, over a period of agonizing weeks, began to convert living tissue into a brittle, silicate crystal lattice. It started in the extremities, a shimmer in the fingertips, a cold, hard pain in the toes. Then it spread, turning muscle to sculpted quartz, blood to fine, red sand, organs into delicate, useless sculptures. The final horror was the mind, trapped, aware, inside a perfectly preserved crystalline statue, until even neural electricity ceased. The Hyalvana's greatest hospitals became gardens of grotesque art, their finest bioreconstructors and nanite swarms helpless. The plague laughed at purity. It fed on perfection. In their desperation, the Hyalvani Galactic Conclave did something unprecedented. They sent out a wideband, non-discriminatory distress call. A medical SOS to any species with even a rudimentary understanding of biology. It was an act of profound humility and profound hopelessness. One of the respondents was a human vessel, the Hippocratic Oath, a modest exploration and first contact ship from the Sol Federation. When the sleek Hyalvana shuttle docked with its graceful, organic lines, and the human delegation stepped out, the hope in the Hyalvana medical liaison's eyes died. His name was Vielin. The humans were messy. Their environmental suits were sturdy but inelegant, scuffed from asteroid dust. Their tools were a combination of sophisticated scanners and what looked like crude physical instruments. And their chief medical officer, Dr. Eris Thorne, carried not a sterile biocase, but a worn satchel made of what appeared to be animal hide. Vielin, his own fingers beginning to show the faint, telltale glimmer of the plague, guided them through the luminous halls of the Genesis Spire Hospital. "We appreciate your response," he said, the translation software struggling to mask his disappointment. "Our symbiote nanite infusion protocols have failed. The pathogen's mutation rate exceeds our algorithmic prediction models. Our gene locks are being picked in moments." Dr. Thorne, a woman with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair tied in a practical braid, listened intently. She stopped at a viewing port. Inside, an Hyalvana child, no bigger than a human 10-year-old, lay on a resonance bed. Her leg was almost entirely transparent crystal, catching the room's light in heartbreaking rainbows. A soft whimper escaped her. "The pain?" Thorne asked, her voice low. "The translation process is excruciating," Vielin said flatly. "We manage it with targeted neural dampening. It is all we can do." Thorne nodded, unslinging her satchel. She pulled out a small, ceramic pot, unscrewed the lid, and began applying a pungent, greenish paste to her own temples. Vielin recoiled, his olfactory sensors overwhelmed. "What is that organic compound?" "An old remedy," Thorne said. "For a headache. The starlag lag is something fierce." She offered the pot. "Mint and willow bark. Helps with inflammation." Vielin stared at the paste as if it were toxic sludge. A soft, derisive chitter came from a nearby Hyalvana technician. The translation matrix didn't need to work for the meaning to be clear. Primitives. The final straw was Thorne's presentation to the Conclave's medical council. She stood before the shimmering holograms of the galaxy's greatest minds, holding up a small, gnarled root. "Our analysis suggests the glass plague isn't attacking at the genetic or even the cellular level directly," she explained. "It's hijacking the metabolic pathways. It's using the body's own process of laying down mineral structures, like those in your bones, and perverting it. You've been trying to fight a symptom, the crystallization. We need to fight the signal causing it." She pointed to the root. "This is from a world with extreme radiation. Salix irradiatus. It produces a compound that, when combined with an alkaloid from this," she held up a purple leaf, "and a specific peptide from a Terran earthworm's mucus, creates a catalytic inhibitor. It doesn't kill the pathogen. It confuses it. It makes the host's body taste wrong, disrupts the translation signal." The silence was broken by a ripple of synthesized sound. Laughter. cold, incredulous, and utterly devoid of humor. "You propose," said the head of the council, his crystalline voice dripping with contempt, "to treat a galaxy-class biomechanical scourge with mud, weeds, and worm slime?" "I propose," Thorne said calmly, though her knuckles were white on the root, "to use what works. Our primitive medicine isn't primitive. It's a database, a 60,000-year-long clinical trial, written in the blood and survival of our species. We didn't have bioscanners. We had observation. We didn't have nanites. We had trial and error. This worm slime saved millions from sepsis before we ever saw a bacterium under a microscope." The laughter grew louder. Va Lin, standing at the back, felt a pang of shame for her. They were being cruel. But in their eyes, she was a healer proposing to treat a plasma burn with a mud poultice. It was obscene. "Your request to test this concoction on a live subject is denied," the council head declared. "The risk of biocontamination alone is catastrophic. You may continue your observations, but consider your role here now purely anthropological." The human team got to work, but their methods were anathema to the Yelvana. While Yelvana scientists worked in silent, sterile pods, manipulating matter at the subatomic level, the humans turned a quarantined lab into a kitchen. They cultivated microorganisms in petri dishes, talking to them like old friends. They boiled water in crude glassware, steeping dried leaves and fungi, creating concoctions that filled the air with earthy, spicy, and sometimes foul odors. They used a machine that simply crushed plant matter with immense pressure to extract oils. Dr. Thorne spent hours poring over scrolls, actual digital replicas of handwritten scrolls, filled with diagrams of plants and planetary symbols. The Yelvani Oversight Committee observed from behind sterile fields. Their reports to the conclave were laced with despairing confusion. They speak of humors and energy pathways, concepts debunked by our science millennia ago. They propose introducing live, friendly bacteria into the gut microbiome to outcompete the pathogen. It is biocontamination madness. One of them is synthesizing a compound derived from the mold growing on their own food stock. They call it penicillin, a barely regulated broad-spectrum toxin. Defeated, the human team was confined to their quarters. But Thorne wasn't done. She requested, and to the Yelvana's bafflement, was granted access to the Xenobotanical Archival Gardens, a vast repository of non-sentient flora from across the galaxy. It was a place of quiet beauty, but also of profound sadness, a museum of life, while life seeped away from the spire above. Thorne didn't go there to study. She went there to work. With permission from a resigned and pitying Va Lin, who drew a small amount of comfort from her stubbornness, she began to tend a forgotten corner. She got her hands dirty. She talked to the alien plants. She sang to them. Va Lin watched her one evening, hidden in the bioluminescent gloom. He saw her gently prune a shivering silver fern. "There you go, little one. Too crowded, wasn't it?" She hummed a tune, a lullaby from a world he'd never seen. And as she hummed, Va Lin's enhanced sensors picked up something. A change. The plants in her immediate vicinity seemed to perk up, their photosynthetic rhythms syncing to her voice's vibrations. It was unscientific. It was emotional. It was compassionate. He approached, the glimmer in his hand now reaching his wrist. "Why do you do this?" "They are non-sentient. They feel no gratitude." Thorne didn't look up. "Maybe not. But I do. Healing isn't just a transaction, Va Lin. It's a relationship. You care for the body because it houses a person. You care for the garden because it houses life. It's all connected. Your science treats the body as a machine to be fixed. Ours remembers it's a world to be tended." She looked at his crystallizing hand. Her eyes held no pity, only a deep, shared pain. "You're in pain. The neural dampeners aren't enough, are they?" He was silent, which was answer enough. Against every protocol, against the dying echo of his people's laughter, he extended it. Thorne didn't reach for a scanner. She took his hand in hers. Her skin was warm, slightly rough. Human warmth. She examined the crystal not with clinical detachment, but with the focus of a jeweler, or a gardener seeing a blight on a beloved rose. Her touch was gentle, reverent even. "It's beautiful," she whispered, and the statement shocked him. A terrible, cruel beauty, like a frozen scream. Then, from her pocket, she produced a small vial of amber oil. "This is from a tree that only grows after a forest fire. It's for pain. It won't cure you, but let me tend." She applied the oil, massaging it with a firm, careful touch into the living tissue around the crystal. A scent of resin and smoke filled the air. And then a miracle, not of cure but of care. The agonizing, cold fire ache that had been his constant companion for weeks receded. Not much, but enough. Enough for him to breathe a sigh that was almost a sob. In that moment, Violin didn't see a primitive with her weeds. He saw a healer, using the oldest tools in the universe. Empathy, touch, and an unwavering will to soothe suffering, even if she couldn't end it. Act 4. The Worm Slime Salvation. The next day, the plague jumped phases in the Genesis spire. The child, little LSIA, began to crystallize along her spine. The neural dampeners failed. Her screams, high and clear as breaking crystal, echoed through the sterile halls. The head counselor, his own voice fractured with grief and defeat, made an announcement. All non-essential personnel were to be evacuated. They would seal the spire, a tomb for the dying and the dead. Thorne stormed the control center, her team behind her. "You can't. She's still alive in there. And she will die in agony, as will we all," the counselor said. "Your folk remedies are a fantasy. This is the end." Violin stepped forward. His hand, where Thorne had applied the oil, felt different. The crystal progression hadn't just slowed. Scans showed it had stopped at the boundary of the treated tissue. "Counselor, I formally request the human protocol be administered. To me, as a test subject." The chamber erupted in protest. "It is suicide by contamination. You betray scientific principle." "What principle?" Violin shouted, his calm facade shattering. "The principle of dying pure? I have watched. Their medicine is not less advanced. It is advanced in a dimension we have forgotten. It treats the context of the disease, not just the formula. They heal the soil, not just the plant. Let them try, or seal me in the spire with my daughter." A terrible silence fell. The counselor, seeing the desperate hope in Violin's eyes, a hope that looked terrifyingly like the human's own, gave a stiff, tiny nod. It was not done in a sterile pod. It was done in the garden in Thorne's corner, under the light of foreign stars. Thorne and her team worked with the quiet efficiency of master craftspeople. They brewed their tea. They pressed their oils. They synthesized their worm slime peptide. They combined it all into a single, shimmering, oddly fragrant infusion. "It will make you very sick," Thorne warned Violin, who lay on a simple cot she had brought. "Your body will think it's under attack from 100 different angles. It's the point. We need your metabolism in utter chaos to scramble the signal." He drank it. The reaction was violent. Fever, tremors, purging. The AL medics watched in horror, ready to intervene. But Thorne just wiped his brow, held a basin for him, hummed that same lullaby. She tended. For 12 hours he burned. Then the fever broke. Exhausted, he slept. When he woke, the first thing he saw was the morning light of the garden star filtering through the leaves. The second thing he saw was Thorne, asleep in a chair beside him, her satchel open, looking older and wearier than any being of such short years should. The third thing he saw was his hand. The crystal had not receded, but the angry, red, inflamed border between flesh and crystal was gone. The flesh was pink, healthy, and the cold, deep ache was gone. A full body scan was ordered. The results echoed through the silent conclave like a thunderclap. The pathogen was still present, but it was dormant, confused. The translation signal had ceased. Violin's body was no longer a compatible host. The worm slime catalyst had, as Thorne said, made him taste wrong. The plague was starving in the middle of a feast. Act V, the Tenders of Worlds. They didn't call it a cure. They called it the Thorne Protocol. It was messy. It was personalized. It required brewing and gardening, and yes, even the careful cultivation of specific Terran earthworms. It required healers to touch their patients, to learn their rhythms, to see them as living worlds. The humans taught the Alvani not just a formula, but a philosophy. Medicine was not just a science of eradication, but an art of cultivation. Sometimes you fight the blight. Sometimes you strengthen the root. LSIA was the second to receive the protocol. The moment her screams ceased, replaced by a soft, sleepy cry for her father, the last of the Alvana's laughter died, replaced by a silence of profound, humbled awe. In the great hall of the conclave, now filled with the scent of alien earth and healing herbs, the council head stood before Thorne. He placed a hand on his chest, the highest Alvana sign of respect. "We believed," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "that advancement was a path toward purity, toward separation from the chaotic, dirty, living universe. We sought to become perfect, sterile machines of intellect. You have shown us that true advancement is not in separation, but in integration, in connection. Your primitive medicine is not a first step on our path. It is a different path entirely, a deeper one. You are not masters of the biological domain. You are its gardeners, its companions. Thorne simply nodded, her hand resting on her worn satchel. We all are. We just forgot for a while. The galaxy learned of the humans who cured the incurable not with perfect nanites, but with wisdom written in the bark of trees, the soil of their world, and the stubborn, compassionate heart of their species. They saw that humanity's strength was not in transcending nature, but in remembering they were still a part of it, that a healer's touch could be as vital as any scanner, and that hope sometimes smelled of smoke, mint, and fresh-turned earth. Narrator. Music swells, full of warmth and wonder, then softens. And for the first time, the galaxy understood what it truly meant to be human. Not as conquerors or supreme intellects, but as tenders, as caregivers, as the species that would look into the face of a galaxy-spanning plague and offer not just a solution, but a song, a touch, and a vial of worm slime salvation. Oyutaro, if this story of humanity's humble strength moved you, subscribe for more tales of who we are and what we bring to the stars.